The concept of adequate housing is central to the developmental debate in South Africa. The home is an idea which should bring us comfort, and the house a structure which should provide us with security and privacy. However, many citizens in the developing world are at the mercy of the state to provide them with low-cost housing and settlement development. These structures are often built en masse and are often created without a careful consideration of the end user and their needs. The focus of this video is to respond to this issue by explaining some of the basic principles for ensuring that the design of a new or upgraded low-income settlement occurs in a manner that best meets the needs of households that intend to live in these developments. Here are 3 ideas on how to build better low-income settlements. 1. To create a healthy settlement requires an understanding of how a settlement is actually going to be used. When low-income settlements are typically planned, there is often a dream or aspiration for how people will live their lives, what Steve Robbins calls planning for suburban bliss. These dreams are often premised on the notion of creating a formal settlement, with one dwelling per plot and no informal structures. In contrast, many households in low-income settlements place a container or shack on the property to be used for a business. These actions are often a logical response to people's life circumstances, but because these are unplanned, they often occur in a manner which is not safe. For example, backyard shacks being built too close to other structures, which creates a fire hazard, and infrastructure failing due to the higher than expected demand on the system. The best way to avoid these problems is to look at the experiences of other low-income developments and to plan for the reality of what is likely to happen, not what you would like to happen, and to involve the people being planned for in the design process. For example, given that many households will have a second structure on the property, the infrastructure should be designed with this demand in mind. Furthermore, the geometry of the plot should allow for 2 structures to be built on it, while still having sufficient space between them and other structures to mitigate against fire spread. 2. It is essential to plan for people's livelihoods. When most low-income settlements are built, the focus is usually on housing, which neglects the fact that the poor need space to run businesses, rent out space in the backyards, and places to grow food. For a settlement to work, these practices must be accommodated. At a household level, this is first and foremost about ensuring that there is sufficient open space available on the plot that the household can use to create a food garden, to build a backyard shack, or place a container or structure on the property that can be used for running a business such as a spaza shop. At a settlement level, it is ensuring that at intersections and along roads that have a lot of pedestrian traffic and public transport, that the pavements are designed to be wide enough to accommodate informal traders and pedestrians, and that space is set aside for informal markets, community gardens, and other types of business activity. Furthermore, many new low-income settlements also now have shopping malls built in them, but it is rare for space to be made for informal traders and micro-enterprises. Another action that planners can take, through land use management mechanisms, is to require that these malls make space for these types of businesses. 3. People's cultural needs must be recognized and planned for. For many people, their cultural practices are an essential part of their identity, and by planning for these practices, we can show respect for different ways of living and for what people view as important. To do this, it is essential to be aware of who will live in the settlement. Different cultural groups have different practices, which means that their requirements will differ depending on who lives there. Some of the types of spaces that might be required are the following. Initiation sites. Many African cultures have rituals that mark the transition from being a child to an adult. One example of this is the Ulwaluko practice of the Xhosa, where young men go to the mountain for a period of time, typically a month, for initiation. These rituals require large areas of open land where huts can be built and access to ablutions and medical care are provided. Spaces for religious facilities like temples, mosques, and churches. Space for huts to be built for the ancestors in the backyards of people's houses. Safe access to a river, lake, or the sea for baptism rituals, such as those performed by the Zionist churches. Large spaces and community kraals that can be used to accommodate cows and other livestock.